All right, so in our previous video, we had talked about kind of the general background for Gandhi and how he started being a Satyagrahi, right, a practitioner of nonviolence in the context of colonization. And then we kind of talked about kind of these terms of Satyagrahi and ahimsa and what they mean for the overall picture of nonviolence. And then we ended with the metaphysical foundations of nonviolence. So I want to talk more about kind of how nonviolence is an ethical practice. It's an ethical way of existing. Now that we understand how reality works, how is nonviolence the ethical component to it? So Gandhi discusses how nonviolence in the practice of Satyagraha, how it's not just a political tactic, it's a way of existing. It's an entire moral way of being. So one cannot be violent, towards the people that they're closest to, but then be nonviolent in the streets, right? One must be nonviolent all the time in the public realm, in the private sphere, right? We can't flick people off when we're driving. We can't be verbally violent. So it has to be a way of being that we consistently embody, right? It has to become a part of our character in the way virtue does for Aristotle. So when we think about how nonviolence can work politically within, as a means of resisting colonization, Gandhi talks about how violence hasn't really been working in India, so something else needs to be used, and that something else is nonviolence. Yes, nonviolence is more difficult, it's more gradual, it is more long-term. But when we think about what happens when we achieve power by using violence, it just perpetuates or promotes a cycle of violence. It doesn't really truly change things. And we need true change when it comes to these situations of oppression and power inequality. So if you just use violence to end violence, it's not really changing things in the long term. Yes, it can change things in the short term, but is it really making a true impact, right? And so Gandhi believes no, right? It's just continuing the cycle of violence. So in order to be nonviolent, in order to become a true Satyagrahi, we must not even be angry with the person who's hurting us. We can't even harbor any feelings or any negative ill will towards the oppressor, right? We must wish goodness and benevolence upon all beings in general. So we can't be revengeful, right? We can't be mean. We can't be malicious, right? We must consistently embody selflessness and humility. And so we must achieve the state of pure love. So pure love means that we are not experiencing any ill will, right? We are embodying a state of innocence like a baby, and that's what Gandhi talks about, right? We are embodying the state of innocence in the way that a baby achieves that. So pure love means that you do not have any ill will, that you truly feel compassion towards all beings. And this will enable us to live in a perfect state where we are truly being nonviolent. We've been able to live by restraint rather than revenge, right? So a pure state is being able to achieve restraint and self-discipline, right? Through feeling that pure love, through feeling that compassion towards all suffering beings. So when we think about how nonviolence is a political method of resisting oppression, Gandhi talks about how it's not as difficult as we think. We tend to think as a society that we are naturally competitive, we're naturally greedy, we're naturally mean, but Gandhi says that we're actually naturally nonviolent, yet we are unconsciously nonviolent. So we're socialized in our culture to believe that, oh yes, I'm fulfilling my destiny by being violent, by engaging in revenge. But Gandhi says, no, that is not what's happening at all, right? We are completely ignorant when we're being violent, when we're being vengeful. And to be nonviolent means we are exercising our restraint and our humanity. So I want to look at this quote here that's in the text where he says, in our present state, we are partly men and partly beasts. And in our ignorance and even arrogance say that we truly fulfill the purpose of our species when we deliver blow for blow, right? What does that mean? We're ignorant and arrogant when we think that revenge is going to work, when we engage in an eye for an eye, right? How dare we think that? Who are we to assume that hurting other people is really going to change things, right? We're not fulfilling the purpose of our species. Think back to the metaphysics of nonviolence, how nature is founded upon attraction. We're not helping our species at all, right? We're actually hurting our species by acting violently, by delivering blow for blow, right? It's not helping anyone in any case, right? It's just a temporary band-aid over the situation. So later on in that passage, he talks about how restraint is the fundamental law of our being. It requires our full effort. It requires our full will and intentionality, right? We can't be on the fence about it. We have to fully put ourselves in it. But once we're able to do that, we will be successful in being nonviolent. So you also had read a very brief essay in the text called An Appeal to Every Breton. And so, as you know, the British Empire, they were colonizing a lot of countries. India was one of them. And they were also colonizing many other countries in Africa. And so he's specifically talking about what was happening in South Africa between the British and the Zulus. And so what is this war that's happening between them? He's anti-war in general because he sees the effects of war as being just completely terrible and degrading. So let's look at this quote here. It says, "This war has descended upon mankind as a curse and a warning. It is a curse inasmuch as it is brutalizing man on a scale hitherto unknown. All distinctions between combatants and non-combatants have been abolished. No one and nothing is to be spared. Lying has been reduced to an art," right? So think about how one lies to oneself in war to justify their actions, whether it's killing another person or destroying something, right? There's a lot of self-deception involved. And he says that we've lost our humanity because people are killed indiscriminately in war, even if that's not the intention, right? Non-combatants and combatants are killed. So what does it mean when we are just willing to kill people, right? Without really thinking twice about it. Nothing is spared, even if we attempt for that to happen. So lying becomes an art because we become so used to that self-deception, right? We lose our humanity. We're willing to hurt other human beings. Now, in the miscellaneous letters at the very, very end of the essay of the text, he is talking about Gandhi's reacting to the murder of an innocent Hindu government official, because at that time you have British colonization occurring, but you also have a lot of inner turmoil between the Hindus and the Sikhs and the Muslims, right? They all kind of want power within India, and Gandhi believes that everyone should have power within India. It shouldn't just be one religion, but he believes that the constant murders that are happening are not fulfilling anything, not fulfilling any religious texts. They're not helping anyone. They're degrading people. They're hurting people. And he believes that the tendency to use a gun at any moment means that we've really lost our humanity, right? We've really lost it when we're just ready to shoot without really thinking about who we're shooting and the humanity behind the person we're shooting, right? We're not compassionate at all. And he sees revenge as being responsible for all of the horrid happenings that have been occurring in India, and just in general when we think about the history of violence throughout our world. No religion teaches madness, so he says we need to stop using religion as a means to avenge cruelties because it's completely false, right? He says that man has no power to create life, therefore he has no right to take it. So it's arrogant to assume that we can take people's lives when we don't have that kind of power, when we don't have that kind of authority. It's rather presumptuous. So I hope that you were able to have a greater understanding of Gandhi's practice of Satyagraha, and we also see how this impacted Martin Luther King Jr.'s writings in the letter from Birmingham jail. Even though he was coming from a different time, a different culture, a different religious context, he believed in the same principles of nonviolence, being an alternative to violence, even though it's more difficult. All right, so thank you so much for your time today.